At the end of the show, like you might expect to hear me doing a monologue. It's the beginning, and you've tuned in to Playing in Traffic with your host Louis Lee, Ray Guarino, special guest Mark Greene from Cars Yeah, and we're here to entertain you and maybe answer some questions about cars. We can tell a few lies, tell a few stories,
Yeah.
and have a lot of fun.
Tell about the ones that got away.
Yeah.
So, Mark,
Yes, sir.
you are the hardest working man in podcasts in the automotive industry.
Well, thank you. Maybe the craziest working man.
Hey, listen, every day you have a guest. For
Yep.
how many days? 5 days a week?
5 days a week, 21, 22 days a month, and 200 something days a year. And yeah, this morning, I just interviewed this afternoon my 2,112th guest in 8 years. So
Oh, God bless.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, time flies by when you're doing something you love.
Well, that's exceptionally true. And the guy I interviewed today, I interviewed a guy who works at Summit Racing. And also he's a president on the board of directors for Hot August Nights. And I'm doing some promotions for them this year with that event coming up. And he said, how many, I told him what number guest he was. He goes, wait a minute, what? And he said, how do you do that? And I said, well, you just get up early and you put one foot in front of the other and you keep doing it. I have a routine. I have a process in this whole thing that keeps it going. You and I, Louis, were talking before the show started about that process a little bit and how you manage your day and manage your time, because I'm pretty much a one-man band. I have some help with editing, but other than that, my goal back in my Griot's Garage days was my next job would have no employees and no commuting. So I commute down the hall, wear out my slippers instead of my Michelins, and I don't have to deal with anybody but me. And at this point in my life, I like that.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Lots to be said for that. Yes.
Yeah. So, well, thank you. Thank you for your kind words.
Oh, man, we really appreciate you. If everybody, we're live on YouTube and Facebook. So if anybody wants to check out Cars Yeah, you can go to carsyeah.com and check out all of his podcasts from 8 years. Of
8 years. Yeah. Rick Cole was my first guest. He's the guy that started auctions at Monterey during Car Week. Well, back then was Car Weekend when there was only 3 days. Now it's Car Weekend, and the Pasadena concourse starts the weekend before. So now it's the week and a half, Car Week and a half, something like that. But Rick Cole was nice enough to be brave and be my first guest. And I'm still seeing downloads of show one. So that's pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now I listened to one of the podcasts. I think it was 1551. It was the best one I've heard of yours total.
Was that Louis?
I think his name's Louis too. Yeah.
Was that who that? I tried to memorize all the guests by their numbers. It's like license plates. Yeah. Well, that's cool. I tell you, I run into people and they say, "Oh, I was number 975," or I have one guy who wanted to be 917 because he was into Porsches, not Porsche Racing 917, or the 356, Porsche 356, or 911. So, yeah, people that want to be those special numbers. So sometimes. Yeah, I've even got a few that want to be 3,000, but I say, you know what? That's still a little ways away. I don't think I'm going to commit to that quite yet. But
put them to work, make them get the guest in between.
Well, maybe I should start charging for those special numbers. That'd be a way to scale the business a little bit. If you want to be 2,500, you got to pay a little extra. But no, none of my guests pay to be on my show. I'm here to promote them and their businesses. But you were great, Louis. And I'll tell you something. I want to thank you because you are so awesome. I post every day on social media, my guests, and you always repost my shows. And I'm like, you're almost as good as my mom because she does the same thing. So I want to thank you for that. It's very kind of you. It's all about helping each other and promoting each other. So you're a sweetheart.
Oh, appreciate it.
Don't let that sweetheart face fool you. He can hit you with a slipper just as hard as a mom can.
Yeah. Well, I imagine he can. Yeah. It's always good to be respectful of your elders, right?
Yeah. That's for
sure. Yeah, I guess so. Oh no, I really appreciate it. I enjoyed myself coming on your show, and I appreciate you staying dedicated to the industry. I mean, a lot of people jump in, jump out, and so
it's I'm a bit of a bulldog, and sometimes I always said, when you're digging a hole, sometimes you need to know when to stop so you can still get out before you dig yourself too deep. But when I started this, I had a 6-month commitment to myself, maybe 12. Can I start to make some money through sponsorships? Are there other opportunities to scale? And I got into it. And I think about month 3, somebody contacted me and said, can I advertise on your show? And I went, oh my gosh, it might work.
They came to you. That's great.
Which was good. But it's like anything. I mean, you've got to build a track record. You got to build trust. And especially when you're interviewing people, they need to trust you, because if they don't, then you got a rocky start. In fact, when I started this, I used to call my shows interviews, and I learned very quickly people do not like that word. It reminds them of job interviews. It reminds them of first dates, maybe, or whatever. So I changed that word to conversations, and that changed the whole philosophy and the idea.
Maybe that's my problem getting guests. I'll say interviews.
Don't say interviews. Well, you've got another challenge because you're visual too. Yeah. At least like a lot of people at the beginning, you're not going to videotape this, are you? They're worried about how they look. They're worried about their backgrounds. They're worried about how they're going to, am I going to pick my nose or something, whatever. And so you got that challenge. So, then you've got to, I think, maybe help train some people or convince them or ensure them that they're going to be okay. Right?
Yep, that's true.
Yeah. So it's just, we're all a work in progress, right? Every day we try to learn to be a little bit better. And it's all about mastering your craft. And no matter whether you're a builder, a painter, a collector, a podcaster, videographer, YouTuber, you're honing that craft every day. And if you don't keep working on that diligently and act like a professional, then we've seen that people will start a podcast, they do 6 or 7 and go, oh, I'm not making money yet. I'm like, 6 or 7.
Yeah. Well, years back, I was chasing money all the time. Anything I wanted to get into, I was chasing the money. And when I said, you know what, I'm gonna stop chasing the money and just do stuff I like to do and stuff I want to do, it became a whole different feeling. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I've been doing this for almost 8 years, and it'll be September. And I get a couple sponsors here and there, but it don't matter if I do or not, because I'm still doing what I like. I have all my friends come on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We got a good group of steady people that come on all the time. If it was just our main group coming on every week, it's that get into the garage and talk to your boys. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so,
you hit on something very important that I have heard over and over again from people who start their own businesses. And I interviewed a gentleman this morning who has a business, 503 Motoring in Beaverton, Oregon, successful business. They started doing film on cars and then selling cars, buying and selling cars, parts, high-end wheels, suspension, and so forth. And he said the same thing. He said, if you're just going to do something for money, you'll probably not be successful. There's got to be other elements in it. Of course, you need to make an income and be smart about the finances. If you're no good at finances, find some people who are and have them help you. But he said, it's when you stop chasing the money. And I kind of found that way for me. After about 6 months, I had a couple sponsors and it still wasn't making what I wanted. But I thought, I like this. This is fun. I'm providing a service. And for me, I focused on my mantra. Every day I do that, which is inspiring automotive enthusiasts. And I thought, if I can do that through interviewing people, talking with people, having them inspire others, I'm hopefully inspiring others. That's what you do through these talks, inspire others. Then people will feel that, kind of get your groove, your vibe. And they go, okay, he's not here just to take from me. And then when you get into the sponsorship game, you've got to realize, because I was on the other side. When I worked at Griot's Garage, I was there for 20 plus years. I had people call me all the time, racers wanting me to sponsor them. I used to say, look, if I have money to sponsor a racer, it's going to be me. I'm going to sponsor myself in my racing because I like to race, but it's expensive. But more so, I would always ask these people, well, if you have a magazine, you want me to advertise in it, how is that going to help me? Show me that. Tell me that. Promise me that. Well, people are going to see you. What people? Do you even know who I sell to? Have you asked me that quick? So they're chasing the ad, chasing the money versus finding out who I am.
Right.
and then figuring out, do I have what you need? So for me, I try to do that with my sponsorships. I try to say, well, what do you know, I always ask, what's your goal? More sales. Okay. Well, beyond that, like more sales of what and when and how and to whom? And then I can say, do I talk to those people? Do I offer them a solution to their problem? And that's what it comes back to. And that's what I'm hoping happens with Cars Yeah, is people have an issue or a problem. One of them is they have a career, but it's not in automotive, and they want to be in automotive. So if I can offer them ideas by interviewing people like you guys that can show them, oh, I didn't know people did that for a living. People get paid for that.
Yeah.
So, and what's funny, Lewis, is when I was a kid, my dad said, you know, what do you like? And I said, well, I like cars. And he said, what do you like about cars? And I said, well, I like keeping cars looking clean. He said, well, what about washing and detailing cars? I said, okay. And he said, well, why don't you go do mine? You see where we're going here. Okay. So I went out and spent the day cleaning his car, and he came out and he said, okay, well, how much time did you spend? What do you think your time's worth? So, you know, here's $10. And I went, $10? Whoa. Light bulb goes on, you know?
Yeah.
And he said, well, you seem to like that. Why don't you have a paper route? Why don't I help you make a flyer? You put it in your paper. You have 64 customers, pitch 64 people. And if you could just get 5 of them, you can make $50. So he put that thought in my head of taking what I love and creating a business. And within 6 months, I quit my paper route and started detailing cars. And then you start to learn about what it costs and, you know, money, equity, and all that kind of thing. So you go, okay, I have to buy some supply. Like he bought me my first supplies. He goes, look, I'll front you your business, you know, costs up front. Thanks, Dad. You know, yeah, I mean, he saw what he was trying to do. You know, he's trying to show me. My dad had his own business his whole life. He was an architect. And I did that until, well, through college. Paid for my college, was detailing cars. And I'll tell you something funny. I was one of these kids that was a good kid. I never got into drugs. I was so afraid of disappointing my parents. But I always had money because I was detailing cars from the time I was 14. And I remember one day, a kid, he was kind of new to our school, and he said, hey, you have any, you know, pot? I go, what? He goes, well, I don't sell pot. He goes, well, you always seem to have money. Like, you know, you got a nice car and a surfboard on the top and stuff. I figured you're a drug dealer. I go, no, but I'll wash your car. You know,
I'll keep you clean.
Yeah. But that idea of taking your passion and figuring out a way to wrap it into what you do, that's the secret sauce to life, right?
Yeah. Yep.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
Right.
I tell you what, there was days that I was real down on, you know, whatever business or just life, you know what I mean? And Thursday night pops in and the fellas come on and it could be one word to just get you back into where you need to be. You know what I mean? And that's what I appreciate with all our guys that always come on, our regulars. And then the guests that come on, you know, like I said, they can come on and say one word and get you back into the groove. And it's like, you know, other people are going through the same thing I'm going through, or, you know, so it turns into a more of a therapy for me.
Yes.
And I wish I could share it with more people. You know what I mean? Like, other than car people, just share it in general. You know what I mean? But
well, you can, because you have a voice, but it goes back to that listening and understanding what someone's concerns are. I have a couple friends, and I've had this happen over time, that have reached out to me and they're trying to find a job. Either they lost a job or they just hate what they're doing and they want to go do something new, and they like car stuff. And so they say, Mark, your whole life you played with cars. I mean, you know, for 23 years or so, I was at Grayo's Garage. I was in the car world, getting to do all that. 8 years now, close to 9, I've been doing this. So just today, I had one of these guys for 11 months. He's been trying to find a job. He's not been successful. He worked in the car industry for a long time, but he's trying to do something completely different. But he's got a 30+ year track record of doing one thing. And now everyone just looks at that and goes, well, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for this. And he's trying to convince people, I can do that too. I learned these skill sets on this job that carry over. But that's hard for employers to understand sometimes. And I could tell he sent me another job he applied for. It wasn't anything even really, I don't think he even wanted to do it, but he said, well, I got passed up on another one. And I could just tell he was down. And so I called him today, and I had just had a conversation with someone else who had been on my show, my podcast, who was calling to thank me. He goes, ever since I was on your podcast, my business has exploded. All these people are now calling me, and I've got more work than I could do. I just wanted to thank you. I said, wow, that's really rewarding for me that reach happened for you, and it expanded your business. And I went, you know what? I have a friend who I think could do what you're doing if he had some training. Would you talk to him and give him some encouragement? And I said, maybe even he could come and help you if you have so much work to do. Time to hire somebody. Well, he goes, no, I don't want to hire anybody. This is why I got into this. I don't want to do. He does valuations of cars for people, goes to collections and writes up very detailed reports. He went and trained on this. But the long story short here is I called my other friend. I said, hey, you came up in my mind today. Have you ever thought about this career path? And I started telling him why I thought he was good for that. Because I said, you're very personable. You're very empathetic. You're very honest. He's one of these guys that when you meet him, you feel like he's your friend immediately. He's just always happy. And I think he's got 7 or 8 kids. I don't know how you could be. I'd be worn out. Not that I'd be sad with kids, but I've got 2 of my own. But you know what I mean? That's a big bird.
Work.
Not burden. It's a big handful of responsibility is a better word. And I said, but your personality fits this really well. And I could tell during that conversation, his mood went from a 2 to a 9. And he just goes, I want to thank you, man. You really sparked something in me today. And I said, oh, well, that's good. I gave you an idea of something that might work for you. And he goes, not only that, but you just told me
you're thinking about
that something's coming and I'm thinking about him. And I told him this whenever he misses a job that he has an interview for. I said, all you did was dodge a bullet that you didn't know was going to hit you right here. Because when somebody denies you a job that you want, I always say that's because they see it's not for you before you see it. And it would not work for you. And that's the only way you can look at it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like you say, you get depressed. Like some days we all have. I mean, I have times I go, oh man, this is a huge amount of work. And, I've got to find 5 more people for next week. And I don't have time to just go run off and do whatever I want. And then I have to kind of bring myself back up and say, well, wait a minute. What if I was doing that job? Would I be happier?
Right.
I don't think so.
Right.
It's kind of like when you're ready to quit, go back and remember why you started. It's like restoring a car. You're all excited. You get an old car. You're all jazzed. You start working on it. You get working on it. And then after about 6 months, you're like, oh my gosh, this car's it's beating me up. I didn't know there was all this rust in the frame. But you have to stop and go back to the excitement you had. And I think this relates nicely to something that I was telling a young person I met the other day. He was frustrated because he goes, I've always wanted a cool car and I can't afford one. And I said, well, do you have a car? He said, yeah. I said, you know how many people in the world wish they had any car?
Right.
It's a paradigm shift, right?
Yep.
And you could see in his eyes, all of a sudden he kind of went, okay, I see what you're doing. But my mom used to do that with my sister and I. We would say, oh, I want another Matchbox car, another car. I really want that. My mom would say, you have 20 cars. What you were excited about those? Why are they not exciting you anymore? Why don't you be grateful that you have 20? Because, you and I grew up in an era where, there's Chinese kids starving, eat all your food, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why we all have eating disorders now. But you know what I mean? So it's a paradigm shift. It's helping people see something in a different perspective. And, hopefully some of the words I've said tonight might trigger that with somebody. Some things you say to people might trigger that in somebody. And all it takes is that little, it's like being nice to somebody, the barista. Wow, you have a beautiful smile. Instead of being on your phone, cappuccino, sure, right. Yep. And you don't even look at the person. But if you take a moment and smile and say, wow, your smile is beautiful. Man, your eyes are awesome. Or, you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Just that little bit.
Yeah.
I have a little funny story. When my kids were younger, we go to McDonald's or wherever, and I would order and get the stuff, and then I would say, okay, Brian, thanks, or Carol, hey, can I
say their name.
Yeah, and my kids would say, Dad, especially if it was somebody that they knew from school, how do you know them? How do you know their name? How do you know who that is? I was like, well,
It's
it
right
really
here.
wasn't too hard. They're wearing a name tag.
Yeah.
But better than that is how they look back at me. Like, how do you know my name? Like,
Right. You took the time to notice.
Yeah.
wearing a name tag. It's like,
Right.
but they get all freaked out.
You know,
So-
my father-in-law, my wife's dad was awesome. He was a 33-year Marine. And, you know, he commanded troops. He served in Vietnam multiple times. I mean, all this stuff. And he was a master at de-escalation because he learned that in the Marines, how to de-escalate a situation, because you don't want to escalate a situation in the military. You want to calm people down, and especially troops that are being fired upon or being stressed over something. You know, they have to get this plane loaded. It's about to take off, whatever. And he taught me some real skill sets. And what you just said, Ray, was one of them. Is when you're speaking to somebody, you look at them, you ask, what's your name? Oh, Ray. Yeah, Ray. I really need your help today. You know, the room that you guys gave me for this hotel, it just isn't quite what we expected. My wife's really disappointed. And I know we paid for a certain kind of room, but is there any opportunity for us to get a little nicer room so that this trip means something for her? And I would assume that you're empowered to help people because of your position here. I mean, I would sit here. We all went to Hawaii once and we were given the crap rooms. And I learned a lesson. You don't ever check in early because they give you the worst rooms, because they save the best rooms for the people that are late and tired, that are really angry because their flight was bad. And you don't want to have to deal with them if you can't upgrade their room, if you've given all the good rooms away. So he's always said, yeah, wait and check in later. Interesting trick. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
But he had this skill set, and we ended up getting nice rooms. And it's really not about tricking anybody. It's about proper communication and polite, because we've all been at the airport when that poor ticket counter person is getting yelled at by that guy who is going to miss his connection, and you're standing like, it's not her fault. It's raining.
Right.
You know, why behave that way? So it's learning those personal skill sets. But you know what it comes back to, you guys? I think it's just being polite. And I think the world needs a lot more politeness right now. It seems like after COVID and the economy and whatever's going on in your world, there seems to be so much anger going on. And if you can just enlighten think about this. If one person is having a horrible day, horrible week, horrible month, horrible year, and you encounter them and you escalate them to that next level where they just lose it.
Yep.
But what if you brought them up above that by helping them or just being nice, because no one's ever nice to them?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't take much,
No,
but
it really doesn't.
But it does take an approach, and it does take diligence, and it takes patience sometimes. It's like being on the phone with somebody. Think about supply chain issues right now. You get so angry. You know, I ordered a piece of furniture. I waited 6 months for it, and it got here and it was damaged. And
No.
you're just like, but am I going to yell at the lady on the phone because the UPS guy dropped it and drove over it with a truck? People will, right?
Yeah.
But why? You know, she's got 10 other people yelling at her. So why not be the sweet one?
Yeah.
So she likes you. She'll help you.
Yeah. Get your new product.
Well, hopefully. Yeah, it is what it is. First world problems. There's bigger things going on that are much worse around the world. You think of the poor people in Ukraine, what's going on there, and you just have to kind of give a reality check to yourself. This is not a big deal, right?
Yeah, you know, I didn't realize, like, when you think of other countries, you don't think of them having neighborhoods like our neighborhoods. You know, in my mind, I think of, you know, another country to, you know, so when you see it on the news that they're bombing
neighborhoods,
I'm like, that could be our neighborhood.
There's you got to think about that, and it's horrific. And I think it even happens in this country. We get stereotyped into groups. I grew up in Southern California. I was, believe it or not, a long-haired surfer when I had hair. And I had cousins that live in Texas that were farmers. My dad grew up in Texas as a farmer. And I remember the first time they came to visit, and my cousin said, okay, we got to go to the beach and see all the girls running around in bikinis, and all the blonde haired, he had this whole vision of what I grew up in San Diego, all of San Diego was like. And I'm like, that's just like a sliver on the coast. You get inland and you get inner city, you get Chula Vista or somewhere more Hispanic groups of people that very different culture than the culture out here. You just go down to Pacific Beach or Lucadia, and it's very more laid back and so there's all these slivers, but yeah, I think in the end we're all alike. We just want to have families and do things. But how'd we get off on this tangent?
Well, on that note, I just mentioned it at dinner tonight. Beach Boys song came on, and Brian Wilson just turned 80 years old.
Oh my gosh!
So the guy who was singing about bikinis and surfboards and fun, yeah, now he's 80.
80. Wow. Well, I think he's fortunate to still be with us. He's had some big challenges in his world, but what a creative man. Oh my gosh. And think of the joy that guy's brought with all those wonderful good vibrations and Pet Sounds album. And because I was a musician growing up, so I always liked playing and listening to music. And I remember when some of those songs came out, it was like, what are all those sounds?
He is a musical genius. There's plenty of stuff on YouTube about him. And I love watching the studio versions of how they put the songs together with the studio musicians that were on the records. Beach Boys weren't on the records. And, just the best of the best. And he was quite a taskmaster, but he got it was like Frank Zappa, just of a different, version. And knew what he wanted and got it at all costs, no matter how many takes it took. And he had vision. He just had that vision, which was
he was a perfectionist. If you watch some, and I've watched some of those, the movies aside, because they're always augment and change the truth. But if you watch the real pictures of him in studio, I mean, he would drive people probably to the brink of chaos. Like, I give up. I can't play these chords anymore. My fingers are bleeding, to quote John Lennon. I got blisters on my fingers.
The good thing was he had professional studio musicians who got paid scale or more, and they're like, all right, you want me to do it again? I'll do it again.
I'll sit here and work. Yeah. But he had if you think of those, it's like the Beatles, some of the music they created in their later albums where they really got into some different instruments and noises and sounds and things. And they didn't have what we have today. I mean, any of the three of us, and I don't know about you guys with your musical talent, but mine's pretty much drifted away. But I could go on and use my software and probably create a song.
Yeah.
It sounded maybe not good, but you know what I mean?
Because
we have these, we could get by. I mean, even on my little cell phone, you can, okay, G chord, A chord, now a drum beat and a piano riff, and I just made a song.
So, Lewis, we should tell Mark he's breaking the rule. We're not supposed to talk about music or food until we get after 10 o'clock.
After show.
That's the after show.
The late night
show. Jump on. Oh, yeah, you should see how the conversations go around.
Well, cars. We got to talk about cars.
Yeah, so tell us about your Porsche, your turbo game going on.
Oh, well, the turbo game is gone. I don't know how many people know this, but if you follow cars, you'll know about what I affectionately call my Orange Crush, which is a car I found about 13 years ago. 87 Porsche Turbo, very rare car in the sense that this car was special ordered by a dealer, a Mr. Fortens in Illinois, who saw a Porsche press car, an 86 Turbo in Europe that Porsche painted a very unique non-Porsche, non-standard color, 3-stage pearl metallic.
Nice.
And he saw this and went,
tourism commercial.
He saw this and he said, I want cars that color. And Porsche said, no, that's too complicated. We're not doing that. And he begged him. Long story short, they said, if you order 3 cars, we'll do it. Well, he didn't have 3 customers, but he told Porsche he did. And so he got the 3 cars done. One was the slant nose option, which was I think it was a $16,000 or $18,000 option in 87. Huge money. These cars, I think, stickered for around 65 starting, and then you added options. But he got the paint to sample option, which is a well-known term in the Porsche world where you can have a car painted, not any color, but a paint to sample color, a special color. Nowadays, they charge $11,000 for that. I contacted Porsche and said, would you paint a Porsche the orange that my car is? And they said, that will be $25,000.
Wow.
and we can't guarantee we would even approve it. We have to take about a 9-month test period. And I went, I like it, but not that much. So at any rate, he got these 3 cars and he sold them. Mine came from the original owner, and I've had it for about 13 years. And I use it. I love Porsches, been a Porsche guy my whole life. And I like to drive my cars. So I drove it a lot and enjoyed it. But over the last 3 years or so, prices have just, well, the used car market, we all see what's going on there. The classic car market, the Porsche market, which I follow, is just gone insane. And there's a whole probably show discussion on why we think that's happened. At any rate, I got to a point with the car in January where I said, you know what? I'm just not enjoying this because I'm so nervous because the value of my car is the color and the fact that it's never been damaged.
I recommend Nature Made
So
by.
it's all original, unique color. It's a turbo. It was the fastest car of the day back in the day. Now a Toyota Camry would probably beat it. So I started thinking, I want to get a car that I will drive again and I'll enjoy and I'll not freak out. I mean, this car got to a point where I wouldn't leave it parked anywhere. I was so afraid somebody would be backing up in their big Escalade and look in the mirror and not see it, because cars have gotten huge, right? They're big. You put my Porsche, my old Porsche, I said my Porsche, not mine anymore. You put the turbo next to a new 911 and it looks like a little pedal car.
I recommend Nature Made by.
Yeah.
So anyway, I decided it was time to let it go. And I consulted with probably a dozen experts, Porsche experts. And I said, what's the best way to go about this? Well, if you don't know somebody who specifically will give you what you believe the car's worth, then bring a trailer. That's the only place to go. And Randy Nonnenberg was guest number 43 for me. So he was one of the first 100. And so I contacted him and said, here's what I'm thinking about doing. He goes, we're the best venue. What else is he going to say? But so I went through this process and then I said, how else should I approach this? Because I'm very emotional about my cars. And bring a trailer, as we all know, if you follow it, there's that long list of keyboard warriors. And some of them aren't so kind and friendly, and that would probably upset me. And so I hired a guy who'd been on my show before, Rafi Manazian. And Manazian, I always say his last name wrong. And Rafi is a car designer, but he also helps people sell cars on Bring a Trailer. He's become an expert at it. He's an evaluator, professional. He's a judge. He knows cars. So he came down to my house. Luckily, he lives an hour north of me, in Bainbridge Island. Came down, looked at my car. He said, okay, here's what I think you have. What do you want for it? And I told him a price that I thought it was worth. He said, I think you're high. I had all my reasons for not being high, but maybe I was high. So I said, well, where do you think we should be? And he goes, let me do a study. I will look at across the board, not just Bring a Trailer, but what cars like that are selling for. And I'll give you a number that I think is accurate. And so he came back and gave me the number. And I said, okay, I think I could live with that. Now what? And he said, well, here's the things I would do to the car to get it prepared. It wasn't a lot of stuff, but a couple little things. My car was a driver, 41,000 miles, not a Concours car, but it was very nice condition, original paint, no dents or scuffs or anything like that. And so he went through the process, took all the pictures, wrote all the copy, and he posted it for me as basically like the broker. Mm-hmm. And he told me, he said, stay out of it. Don't comment. You're not involved anymore. I'm taking control. If there's a question that I can't answer, I'll call you. But he said, everyone will know it's your car because of my presence on social media. So it took quite a while just getting the photo shoot done because it rains a lot up here and it was this winter time and we kept having to cancel because I didn't want to take it out in the rain. So long story short, I asked Randy to be back on my show the day my car went live to talk about the acquisition of Bring a Trailer by Hearst. How is he doing? Again, it was not about me. It was about promoting him, but we were able to weave in the fact that my car is now on Bring a Trailer. And I'll tell you guys, I've never gotten so many reaching out people. I mean, my phone was on fire the whole week. Text messages, Facebook messages, phone calls, emails. And it was all like, what? You're selling orange? What? Orange crab? I mean, it was, and so I had my dialogue in my head of how I answer the question and so forth. And there's an inevitable few people that want to know what's wrong with the car. Nothing's wrong with the car. I've done everything I want to do with that car, and it's time for it to go to the next caretaker.
Yeah.
Because I really think that's the way it is. You guys, would you agree with me? Like Ray, cars you've had that you've let go, do you feel like you were just the caretaker during that time?
Oh, we always are. Yeah.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
matter what we think, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Unless you get buried in it.
Well, some people do that,
people
but
do.
that's kind of a shame. I never understood that. It's like when the Who used to destroy all their guitars and amps at the end. It would make me crazy as a kid. I'm like, I want that Fender. I want that Gibson.
I will tell you something, Mark. You just said it. That's why I've been an on and off amateur musician since I'm a little kid, and the thing that turned me off to the Who, and it's why I never followed the Who through all my years, was I saw something and it wasn't a video because there were no videos back then. It must have been a TV thing or something. And when they destroyed their instruments, and I was trying to scrap and fetch and paper out to get a drum set, and I'm watching them, kick this stuff off the stage, and I just, even as a kid, I just lost all respect for the band. I said, right. I can't follow these guys.
Well, you must have had a life like me, Ray, where my parents made me work for everything and earn what I had. It wasn't given to me. So if I wanted a surfboard, I had to go make money. That's why I started detailing cars. If I wanted a skateboard, I had to go earn it. And I had plenty of friends who were great people, but their parents gave them whatever they wanted. And I would be at their house and, why'd you leave your skateboard outside in the rain? Somebody might steal it or it's going to get run over. Mom will buy me another one. Yeah. So at the time I didn't like it. I wanted to be like my friends, like, Dad, Joey just got a new sailboat. How come I don't have a sailboat? Well, go earn one, dude. But so at any rate, back to the car, went through the process, and I never sold a car on Bring a Trailer. I bought my turbo actually on eBay. That's where the car originally, that's how I found it back in the day, but there was no Bring a Trailer back then. And so it was a very neat process. And what I did with Rafi was the best money I ever spent, because it enabled me to back away. And inevitably I had to kind of answer the questions, but Rafi gave me that concept that I shared with you guys. Have you done everything with the car that you want to do with it? Or are there still drives you want to take, or you still want to show it places, or do things, modify it, whatever. I never modified it because it was all original, and I sat there and I really thought hard about that. And I went, yeah, I'm done. I've done everything I want to do, and now I'm happy. So that's what did it for me. And I got very close to my price. I mean, within a point where I was sitting here with my wife and Rafi on the phone, and I said, should we let it go? And she's like, sell it. Because it was a burden for her. She would look at the value of that car, and she knew what it meant to me. And every time I drove it, she'd like, don't drive it. Somebody's going to run into you, or, you're not going to leave it anywhere. And then you're going to be so sad and you're going to be so bummed out. And so it was a burden. I started to realize it was a burden on her too. And it wasn't so much about, happy we got the money we got, because it was a great return, until I had to talk with my tax guy today and found out how much taxes I'm going to have to pay on that.
Right.
I don't know if anybody's listening, but they probably know this better than me, but did you know capital gains on a car is 28%?
Wow.
That's terrible.
It's considered a collectible. That's different than capital gains on property or income, or income in the way of like dividends, or money you make in the stock market. Yeah, I was shocked to learn that one. I'm like, who came up with that rule? Well,
and who signed off on it?
That was some smart politician in the old days that didn't think that you deserved that money that you got. But so so I'm really happy with the process. I think that venue for a car of that caliber, and probably a car of any caliber, because what Bring a Trailer has over, and there's lots of other people now. I think there's about 40. I call them kind of Bring a Trailer wannabes, and I don't mean to diminish any of them, because I've had some on my show, and they're trying very hard to do what Bring a Trailer has done, but maybe in a little different way. And more power to them. I think it's wonderful, and I like competition, but it's hard to beat Bring a Trailer with their audience and also their price. They charge you $99. That's really. And if you go and look at my car, I got over 30,000 views
Yeah, for $99.
When someone who has stature in the community, or social media, whatever does, Tom Cotter,
Yeah.
within a year sold he had a Ford wagon that was really cool. It was optioned out. It was a big block car, 4-speed, bucket seats, console, power windows, loaded, but it had patina. It wasn't a perfect car outside. And because it was Tom Cotter's, the views went up, and he got a good dollar for that car too.
Well, I'm not as famous as Tom Cotter, but I do have some presence. So hopefully, I put once my car went live, I pushed it. I talked about it. I pushed it out there on my social media. So that exposed it even more. You mentioned Tom Cotter. 2 weeks ago, Tom showed up at my house unexpectedly and spent the night.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great.
He and Michael Allen Ross, who's a photographer, very creative photographer. They've been traveling from Key West, and they're going to Dead Horse, Alaska.
Let me see.
Cross country. They were given a new Ford Bronco by Ford in an Airstream trailer, and they're going on all the back roads. In fact,
I saw that.
Tom, you owe me for this.
I was going to say.
His newest book. There you go. Yeah.
Plug his new book. Yeah.
Plug his new book.
And this is kind of like a biography. When he just told me about it, we had him on the radio show, and I said, Tom, it sounds like a Tom Cotter biography. He goes, yeah, pretty much it is. But I just used his one of his quotes today. There's a car in the neighborhood that I was looking at, Corvette, and what I did was I wasn't getting anywhere, so I asked my mailman, which I learned from Tom. Talk to the mailman, talk to the postal people, talk to the UPS driver. And I asked him about it. And of course, he talks to everybody. So he was able to get me a lead and a line, and it really works. And then I found out after talking to this guy just today, in fact, mailmen know a lot more than you think they know.
Oh, of course.
He knows everything that I got. He said to me, hey, I haven't seen you around. You're retired, but where are you? I'm like, I've been keeping busy. I'm not sitting around. He goes, well, I have an 85-foot long driveway with a 6-foot gate in the front. He goes, well, I see the garage is open during the day, but I don't see. Oh, well, yeah, it's because my wife is here and she has the radio on. So, you noticed that. And then he asked me, like, hey, I haven't seen your daughter around. Where is she? I was like, well, now she's working from home. So she's in her home office working. She's not. So this guy's just rattling off stuff that he sees normally that you wouldn't think that they see and know normally, but mailman, watch out for them.
Well, they're like hairdressers. They know all the secrets.
Yeah.
Right? You sit in that chair. Well, I wouldn't know what that's like, but you sit in that chair and you start talking and you just let it all out, and if you've ever gone to a barber or hairdresser, they don't talk. They just let you talk.
Yeah.
If they're good, because there's a subliminal thing going on there. That person listened to me. I'm coming back here because nobody else listens to me, but he or she does. Yeah. So that's a little secret for that sauce. So it was a very good process and I enjoyed it. And the great thing is my car was bought by a gentleman who lives an hour north of me. Go figure. And his curator, the guy who takes care of his car collection, he has a very nice car collection and a lot of Porsches, is a guy that I hired to work for me at Griot's Garage 25 years ago.
Oh, that's
wow.
Cool.
So the day I got my car 13 years ago, this gentleman, and I'm not mentioning names because these guys are kind of private collectors. He went with me to pick up my car. So this guy was with me when I picked up my car. I worked with him for 15, 20 years. And then he called me on Sunday saying, hey, my boss bought your car. And I'm like, your boss? He goes, yeah, I just started working for this gentleman and I'm going to be coming and picking it up. I'm like, oh my gosh, the same guy who picked it up when I got it. So it made me feel good being a car guy because we all kind of get attached to these things, right? Yeah. So it's going to be with somebody I know. And the gentleman who bought it just reached out to me this week and said, hey, your car is awesome. I'm honored to be the next caretaker of Orange Crush. If you want to come visit it anytime, you're welcome to. Right. And so it's like the car community. I mean, we're just, it's a great community. So, it was a good experience. And, except for the sticker shock on the tax deal.
Yeah.
I'm sure the government will spend my money very wisely. Yeah.
Well, you know what? We're a little bit past the halfway mark. I'm gonna let the fellas in. They probably want to ask you a couple questions. And
I know one guy who's got a lot of comments about that Porsche.
Yeah. Here he comes.
Hey, Terry. What's happening, my friend?
What's up, Mark? How you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing great. Nice to see you. I like the hat.
I appreciate it. I got one question for you, though.
Oh, okay.
If you could be a car, what would it be?
If I could be a car?
If you could be any car, just like you ask everyone, if you could be any car.
Okay, well, let me tell you something, though. But my question's a little different than that. It's
Okay.
not what you want to be. It's how you perceive yourself as a car.
Yep.
That's a very
Very
harder,
good.
a much
You could
harder
be
question.
Any car.
Yeah.
What,
Okay.
what car do you perceive yourself as?
Okay, so you're going to pull the mic trick on me. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Exactly.
Jeez, who let this guy in the room? Lewis?
Ray.
I was like, one day I'm gonna get him on the show and I'm gonna ask him that same question.
You know he's a troublemaker, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay. I've been asked this question before. I had a racer on the show, and he asked me. He was my 500th guest, and then he came back and asked me that question. And I'm going to answer the same way because I think it still fits with who I am, and it's a Porsche 911. Now, many people would think I just wigged out or chickened out on that question, but here's why. To me, the Porsche, specifically the 911, is a car that has stayed true to itself throughout its entire entity from 64, when the first one came out, to the car today. Now, yeah, they're changed. They've improved. Hopefully, I've improved over time. Maybe not physically, but mentally and emotionally, and the way I care for people. To me, the Porsche 911 is reliable, but fun. So I like to think I'm very reliable. I don't know if anybody could pull off this many shows as I have and not be reliable. But I try to be fun, but also serious. And you ask my kids, Dad, you're way too serious all the time. Loosen up, you know. Porsche is a serious car. It's seriously designed, the mechanics, the engineering, that it needs to work. And that's from the racing heritage, that it has to perform, but it still delivers. So I still feel I'm not probably a new GT3 RS or anything like that. I'm a little more old fashioned, old 911. If you go back to maybe the early 70 long hood Porsches, which I always loved, that old air cooled era. I had a 72S, which was a really neat, fun car. So yeah, is that a fair answer?
That's a very good answer. I was gonna say a 911.
Well, that's nice of you to say. I mean, I almost don't want to say it because it feels a little bit like I'm puffing myself up too much. I'm not comfortable.
No. I was gonna.
doing
But
that.
see, you went back to 70. I was gonna give you like 80, 81.
Well, you know,
I give you a newer one.
I like. It's why in the 80s I got married in 84, and I had a 74 911 at the time, and I really wanted a new Porsche. In fact, I wanted a turbo. That's why I ended up getting my Orange Crush, because that car has always been in my mind, the 80s. But I had a new marriage. We just bought our first home. We just had our first baby. I couldn't afford a new Porsche. I mean, there's no way. So that car always kind of stuck back there in my head. And of course, the Widowmaker, the whole mystique around the turbo in the 80s, it was the fastest production car you could get at the time. So all of that kind of hypes up your manliness, puff your chest a little bit.
Yeah.
Of course.
But the reason the 70s for me is because was my coming of age. The 70s when I became a teenager, when I got my driver's license. I had a friend whose dad had a 72 that he used to drive and let me drive. So I always remember that. And so those cars kind of bring back that. And I think for all you guys, probably you would agree, cars bring back our youth.
Yeah.
And that's why we love cars. That's why you see right now the cars from the 80s, like my E46 M3 or cars from the 2000s. My 2005 has become so popular now because those millennials that were teenagers that have posters of those E46 M3s, they're now of age and they have jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going back. They're not probably looking at 72 911s or 60 or 65 350 or 64 356s or anything older that are of our era. And I'm not trying to age any of you guys.
Right.
But we live for those. It's like the cars you play with, Terry. I mean, those are cars when you were a kid, you dreamed about having those and building those things, right?
Every last one of them.
Okay. Well, Terry, I'm gonna put you on the spot. What was when you were on Cars? Yeah. What was your answer?
Oh, it was a Chevelle.
Yeah.
69.
That's so
Definitely.
deep. That's so deep in his bloods. It's running through his
Yeah.
veins.
It was Chevelle. Even though I'm a Camaro guy, but like up until the point where I finally got a Chevelle, because if you remember, Mark, I said it was going to choose a '69 Camaro, but the '69 Camaro for me was the pinnacle. That was the car that I always wanted, and it always escaped me. I wanted it in high school, couldn't afford it. I wanted it when I got in college. I needed a more reliable car. When I got out of college, got a job, I wanted that car, but I couldn't get it because it wasn't practical. And finally, I just said, you know what? I'm getting me a '69 Camaro, and I got it. And I love it. I still have it. Love the car.
Yeah.
But it's like a thing where when you want something so bad, and then when you actually get it, it's at like 90% there, 99% there. But it's a little too small for me. I'm 6'3". So, but when I got Chevelle, it was just like, okay, it's a bigger car. You got more room. So. Not saying that I wouldn't get that Camaro. I love the Camaro. I love the '69 Camaro, but I think the Chevelle fits me a little bit more better.
Well, you touched on something interesting too with this whole phenomenon of going back in our youth. A lot of times people will think they want to go back. Like my next door neighbor always wanted an early '60s Corvette. Well, he got to a point. He's an airline pilot making money. He could get one. He went and looked at one, fell in love with it, walked around. Oh, this is my dream. Because he's about 10, 12 years older than me, I think. Oh, sorry, Bill. Maybe not that much. I think he's 70, 71 or something like that. Well, then he drove it. And he was a little too big. The steering wheel was a little too close. He couldn't steer, drove like a truck. And he was like, all that fantasy just kind of melted away. And there's a segue to this comment for all you guys. I'd love to hear from you guys about this. The new outlaw type resto mod. I just had a guy from Scion, the P1800 guys in Sweden that are making the retro P1800. It's by a company called Scion Racing. The Emery Outlaws, Rob Dickinson's Singer, My Dream. I mean, that lottery ticket that I waste $1 on once in a while, I write the word Singer on it because that's what I'm going to order if that number ever hits, which tells you I'm never going to have one. But that's a question I have for all these guys here. I mean, this might be, if you'll let me play this game, Lewis.
Sure.
Let's start with Jim. Jim, is there a car you always wanted, you dreamed about, and you went and finally got to drive it, and you went?
Well, I've driven actually quite a few cars just because of all the different things I've done. I've driven old Corvettes. You're right. I had a chance to drive a 57 T-Bird one time from Queens out to Long Island for somebody. I was like, people like these?
They like to look at them.
Yeah, they do. I have more people pulling me over like, hey, nice car. Dude, I'm delivering it, right? One car that disappoints me the most, and everybody raves about these things, Mercedes-Benz.
Okay, now which one, though? Because
this was a 560 SEL.
What era? So that's 80s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not an SL, not an SEL. SL.
Oh, SL.
And I was like, what is this? One car that does impress me, BMW. Wow.
Which model?
Any of them?
Any of them? Wow. Hey, I'm a BMW guy. I've had 4 M3s now. I love those cars.
I will tell you one thing. Like everybody else here, I'm an American muscle car guy. But when I did work at a speed shop in Queens, the same one Joe D worked at, one of the owners, also dealt cars on the side. So he always had something interesting. He dealt with more interesting cars, and he had a 911 that was converted to a slant nose.
Okay.
And he let me drive it. So like any other muscle car guy, I got on it from the hole, and I'm like, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so I got to the end of the road, and there was a really nice left-hand sweeper that I knew exactly how to take in any American car.
Yeah.
There I am driving Porsche, and I'm going through the turn, and I'm like, this thing didn't even move. I was like, I gotta go back. I went back, and I took a little hard. I was like, oh my God, this thing handles amazing.
Yeah.
So I totally have respect for Porsche. As a matter of fact, I saw on Facebook today is the anniversary of the release of the movie Le Mans. And that is the movie that got me into cars. That is the movie that got me into auto racing.
Yeah. Very
So,
cool. Very cool. Brian.
69 Camaro is my first and second car. I love Camaros. Love everything American muscle, but Porsche will always have a place in my heart, especially 917.
Yeah. Oh, well, jeez. So Brian,
Yes.
what about your first time jumping in a car that you thought was going to be a dream and wasn't quite living up to the dream?
Um, well, that's kind of hard because I'm pretty old school and rough around the edges. And in the handful of stuff that I've driven and what I still want, I'm not an AC guy. I'm not a power steering guy. So you that would not surprise me. And like I said, if I had to and I passed one up and I kicked myself, would be
There you go. We're
a
back to the
79
chart.
930.
Yep.
Well,
Well,
I worked on them for over 20 years before doing what I did. I was a Porsche technician,
oh wow.
and I loved the slant nose and the turbos, old school. They were scary. A lot of people didn't understand how to drive them because it was instant on and instant off, and
Oversteer galore.
they like I said. My other car is an Audi 4000 Quattro.
Ooh,
And
sweet.
you want to talk about having, 300 pounds of motor hanging out or whatever past the front wheel and once you learn how to drive it, you surprise a lot of people really quick with that car. But
yeah.
again, it's learning how to drive. They put the fundamentals of driving into it and not relying.
I gotta show you guys something. Hold on.
Uh-oh.
Oh, he's doing a Ray.
Yeah.
He's doing a Ray.
Oh, Ray.
Oh yeah.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Very cool.
Now I have to say, Porsche was my first favorite car. First poster, you know what I mean, the 911. But then I got away from it when the Lamborghinis and stuff started popping in as I got older.
Right.
But now that I'm older, I'm going back to that thought of I like the Porsche.
Yep.
Well, that model was built for me by when I did Cars Yeah TV show one year. We did 13 episodes in 2013, and then COVID destroyed our TV career, or my TV career. But one of the cameramen, who's actually going to be my guest tomorrow, Jake Gunner, as a side hobby, he builds scratch model type cars. And he had never seen my Orange Crush, but he had heard about it. And so he said, "Could you send me some pictures of your car?" And I said, "Yeah." And then one day this model showed up. This thing is insane. Number one, he got the paint almost spot on, which I don't know how he did off pictures, because my car being that 3-stage pearl metallic, you guys know about pearl. It changes color in the light. It's a chameleon. And somehow he took all those pictures and figured out what that color was. He said he did a whole bunch of test sprays. He didn't tell me he was doing this. It even has a Cars Yeah sticker on the rear window, where my car has one. He built a rear wiper, which my car came with a rear wiper option. The license plate matches my license plate, and my license plate is a vintage license plate. So he even got that right. I mean, incredible. So I told him when I interviewed him for tomorrow's show, I said, I gave away a lot of stuff with my car, but I've had a lot of artists on the show who did, well, like, I don't know if you can see it. Yeah. See the painting behind me? There was right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of chopped off here, but that came from a listener of mine in Russia who's an artist who paints cars. And he saw pictures. That's me in my turbo. He saw a picture somebody took. And so he did a painting. The thing is, well, it's probably 4 feet long by 2 feet tall. And he shipped it to me. I got this package one day. You talk about mailman. He goes, you get a lot of interesting stuff, but this is from Russia. He goes, "What are you doing with the Russians?" Yeah. And I said, "I don't know. I don't know anybody in Russia." And turns out he did that painting for me. So I've kept all these memorabilia things to remind me. But so now I can look at Orange Crush on my desk. But Brian, that's interesting. So let me ask you this: having worked on these cars, because I'm not the mechanic or anywhere close to the mechanic that you are, what would you say were some of the genius things that Porsche did with that car to make it what it is?
Well, I mean, that's kind of I don't know. I mean, I
Kind of a leading question.
yeah.
Well, I'm biased. Come on, Ray.
Yeah, I mean,
My orange
there,
crush.
there was a lot of stuff that that they they um they were way ahead of a lot of other manufacturers, and so it's kind of funny because this was I worked this was in the mid 80s 85 I guess is when I started at the dealership there. And when I went to take a test for Maryland State inspection, the trooper comes in and, he's like, okay, we got to measure a brake drum. Well, we hadn't had a drum on a car since, the late 60s or whatever,
Right.
they were all disc and,
Right.
and he's like, we're standing in this, in the Audi, Porsche, Audi, BMW dealership. And he's like, well, we need to find a brake drum, and I'm like, well, that ain't going to happen. So, like I said, they were so far ahead. And, like I said, other than some of the older, when you get in the mid 60s, but when they went fuel injection, we were so far ahead in advance, and they don't get a lot of credit. And, of course, a lot of people.
Hold on. That's if we're going to agree that K or L Jetronic was very, very advanced.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's a kind of a leading question on that. But again, I to this day, I personally miss working on the car.
Yeah.
Okay. But I don't miss the customers.
Now be nice. Be nice. Well, Ray, you mentioned the 917, and the engine that was in that car was basically modified from the street cars, right?
I couldn't tell you.
Well, they were. Yeah. I mean, if you take the 910s, the 908s, the 907s, the 917s, compared to race cars nowadays, you'd look at the engines and go, this isn't any street car. Those engines were right out of the street cars. Now, in the case of a 917, of course, they stacked them. They ended up with two of those monster engines. But yeah, I set you up for that, obviously, Brian, because I'm a Porsche fanatic.
No, I understand that. But like I said, there was a lot of stuff that was way advanced for that time. And, like I said, there was a lot. Now, of course, I still call them German junk because they could take the most simplest thing in the world and make it extremely complicated.
Right.
When the 911 came back with a convertible top, I mean, they just couldn't leave one type of operation system. They had to put all three back in. They had to have the manual to unlock it. Then they had to put the cables to move it. They had to put the hydraulics in. And then they had a whole bunch of gears and the switches all over the place. I mean, you want to talk about just overcomplicating something to the nth degree. But
Brian, does this bring back
Ross Topworth? Yeah.
Good stuff.
But Brian, here's something interesting. My second Porsche was an 84 Carrera Cabriolet.
Yeah.
I lived in San Diego. It was my daily driver. And when I got that car, I wasn't even planning on buying a Cabriolet. It was a weird fluke that happened. I turned down the wrong street. I was looking for a coupe that was for sale one street over in Point Loma. And ended up, this guy was pulling his car out and putting it up for sale. It was crazy. Beautiful car. Platinum, chocolate brown interior. Yeah. It was a European car. Remember the gray market cars back in the 80s that some got brought in here? Well, this was one of them. It had all these modifications to it done at the factory, including in the engine. I mean, it was just a marvelous car. But San Diego doesn't rain very often. But when it does, you'll get kind of a drenching. That top was worthless. The water actually went through the canvas. And I remember driving it to work one morning. I'm like, it's raining inside my car.
I used to upset a few customers because I would tell them to buy a rain suit. Yeah. We were constantly, especially if you really, I mean, I don't want to turn the show into a 911 show, but you take a Targa, you take a top about yay big, and you fold it up into a road map and you stick it in the front trunk, and then you leave it there for 3 months, and then you pull it out and you expect it to seal the car back. Right. It's
a different deal. But I'll tell you something funny. In the owner's manual in that car, it actually said, top is not conducive to inclement weather. It said that. And I had a business partner. I worked in advertising at the time. He was a BMW guy. So we always had this little battle going between Porsche and BMW. And I remember I cut a plastic trash bag at work and put it over the top and took the top open and sealed so that it wouldn't leak while I was sitting in at work. And he came in, he goes, "Why does your car have a diaper on it?" Oh, he was unmerciful. Yeah, at that one. So we got Mean Papa Squirrel in the room. My first question for you is, where the hell did you get that name?
My business is Flying Squirrel. I sell at Renaissance fairs and places like that.
Okay.
My wife is Mama Squirrel. We have a daughter. She gave me that name because they needed, Facebook wouldn't let us have a name. She couldn't just put Papa Squirrel. They said it had to have a differentiator, I think. Anyway, she had to add mean to it.
Mean.
Because, she says I'm very mean to her, not getting her all these things.
Well,
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well,
No,
I never
you
said
didn't.
that.
She just walked in. That's why.
Yeah, she caught you in that. So,
Yeah. And
do you like to be called Mean Papa or Squirrel?
doesn't matter.
Okay, I like Squirrel. So you're gonna be the
That's
flying
what
squirrel.
I usually get.
Squirrel. So
I just don't like
Rocky.
being called for lunch.
okay. So
Right.
Squirrel, same question to you. A car that you dreamed of, you lusted after, you loved. It's kind of like that girl in school that you just are in love with and you wish she'd go out with you, and you take her on a date and you go, "Oh my gosh, this is horrible." So when you relate that to a car, is there a car that has done that to you?
Some background. My dad was American, i.e., he would not buy anything but GM or
Ford?
no Fords.
No? Oh,
GM, only GM.
only GM. Okay.
So no foreign cars for him.
No Fern.
He didn't believe in foreign cars.
Okay.
Too small, too hard to get parts for. Lots of good excuses. So I always wanted, believe it or not, a 71 Pontiac Model J.
Okay.
That's a big road hog.
Yeah.
Handles like a
Road
hog
hog.
on ice.
Okay.
It
That
just
paints
don't
a
handle.
picture. Yeah.
But I just liked it because there was a lot of room, and you could sit back in it, look like you're styling. Just sit back in the car and drive down the road.
Yeah.
And it was comfortable. And so I had one for about 2 years. Then I sold it because when you drove through water puddles, the power steering would lock up.
What?
Drive through a water puddle and go to turn,
That's it.
couldn't move it.
You're toast.
That's it. And about 20 seconds later, maybe shorter than that, but it seemed a lot longer, it would start working. So shortly after that, I sold the car because that time I'd gotten stationed in Washington, D.C. and Virginia. And it doesn't rain in Virginia. I had visions of me driving into something with the family in the car. So I sold that car, but I liked it. It was fun.
But then the new owner tightened up the belt, took that problem right away.
It never squealed. It never squealed. I didn't
Doesn't
want
have
to
to
find
squeal.
out.
It doesn't have to squeal.
Yeah. Yeah.
See,
My
that's
Riviera, my Riviera used to do the same thing. My 71 Riv did the same thing through a puddle.
but see, you were a mechanic. I had to learn all my stuff the hard way.
Okay.
A little
Well,
bit
I
here, a little bit there, and nobody ever told me that. My daughter's disagreeing with me.
So Ray, you just mentioned a car, the Riviera.
Oh God, that's another one.
John Houlihan, who was on the GM team that designed that car. There's a picture of him. Oops, my camera's on the opposite end. He just sent me this book. Yeah, I got it yesterday.
Oh, Cars of My Life. Okay.
Cars of
Nice.
My Life. And he's a designer who worked on that car. And so the book is full of drawings that some of them are interesting cars, but here's a cool one.
Would it
62 Chevy,
be?
Wow,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
that's nice.
62 Impala,
Isn't this
he
four?
he was telling me what?
Isn't that a 4, not a 2?
I thought it was a 62.
I thought it was a 3.
Well, double check me.
Okay, gosh, now, Louis, you got like the police here today. What's with
Yeah,
Well, just
They don't
keep
play.
walking. It doesn't matter.
these guys know their stuff.
Okay, 1962 Chevrolet Impala SS convertible.
Okay. All right. I thought the back to okay.
I figure he knows what he's doing because these are all cars he actually worked on the design team for. But at any rate,
right?
Maybe
you know,
that,
you
that
bring
could
the-
have been. Because I thought that was a 64 too. Maybe that could have been designed for the 62 or whatever.
Yeah. And it
But then
then
kinda-
64 production.
yeah,
It didn't-
you're right.
Well,
Right.
Here's a way. The 64, the front pillar went straight, right? It wasn't curved, was it?
Oh well, this
It
is
was
a
still curved in
60.
4, I
No,
think.
63 was the last year curved.
Yeah, I know that. That I couldn't tell you.
64 Impala, because 65 they changed the whole car.
Yeah, 65 was
In
totally
66 they
different.
changed it. So 64 was when it was straight, where 63 it curved in
It
like
was
that.
actually the last
along
year
with-
the
well, this
early
is
60.
curved. This is curved.
So
Yeah.
then it's 63, 62.
That was
Yeah.
the last year of the 64 was last year of the X frame also.
Yes.
You know, Louis, your boys here have a hard time staying on course. You know that?
Hey, that's what
Stay
happens
for
when you're in a
hours,
garage
see
full of guys.
Stay for another hour, see what happens.
Yeah, I hear about the
Put
late
my
night show.
head down.
Yeah,
Put my head down.
we're gonna change the vodka to scotch.
Yes,
The reason I bring him up is because he told some really interesting stories about the design of that Riviera and how they came up with that. And the people at GM, the higher ups, just went, "There's no way we're building that. That's too crazy. I mean, it's just way too crazy." And they were trying to make it work on, I forget the car that the frame. They want to keep the frames, kind of like when the Mustang came out. That wasn't a custom frame that came from the car before. The Falcon. Yeah, I always think Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
That's a different machine. It's a different car.
Right.
And he said that when the car couldn't fit on that frame very well, that they were required to fit it on, but they had to modify some things. But that back window, that pointy thing, I mean, all this stuff. And he said they had to fight tooth and nail to get that car done. And finally the guys in the suit said, "Fine, okay, but if this thing fails, you guys are all in trouble." And rest is history. The car was loved. I mean, it was just so unique and
You were
different.
either loved or hated. Still to this day, it was loved or hated.
Well,
Wait a
whoever
second, you
hates
talking
it,
about a 71?
Yeah, the boat
Boat
tail.
tail?
Earth
Okay.
boat
the
tail.
boat tail.
The
Yeah.
the boat tail. Exactly.
How
okay.
could you hate that car?
I don't. I love the car. And I
okay.
still have that rear glass under my pool deck, right? So
Oh, you do?
I saved it. Yeah, I saved the interior, the glass. I saved the 1-year gas tank. Yeah, I got a bunch of parts for that car.
Brian, you'll like this story. A friend of mine bought a 68 soft window Targa. Remember, they only did that for like 2
Yep.
years.
Yep.
Weird deal, right? And he didn't like it. So he brought that. I went with him to LA. I grew up in La Jolla. We drove up to LA with his trailer and he wanted to buy this car. And he goes, "Your job is to talk me out of this car." We get there and it was a disaster. I mean, I could see through I said, "Bobby, do not buy this car." He was out handing the $100 bills over. I'm like, "Bobby, stop. So we took it home. He never restored a car. He did a marvelous. He worked forever on that car, sprayed it with lacquer in his garage, got high. I mean, all the stuff. But he hated that window. So he went and bought the glass to put in the back out of a junkyard. And of course, he wasn't really super skilled. So when he fixed a lot of the rust, which is around the seals, the window didn't quite fit in the channels. It was just like 1/16 of an inch off. And I said, "It's so close." And he goes, "Well, go on the other side and push, and I'll push on this." you know where we're going, right? And I go, "Oh, it went in." Thousands of pieces of glass, every glass in my mouth and my tongue cut, bleeding.
Oh no.
Yeah, we still joke about that. But he joined after college. He went off to be a naval aviator. So he flew off to become a Marine pilot. And he drove that car across from San Diego to Pensacola to flight school. And he got as far as Alabama. And he was in a hotel and came out the next morning for part of the last leg. And somebody stole the car. It was gone.
Oh,
my
never saw it again. So,
Wow.
yeah,
no.
sad story. But yeah, I still remember that feeling of that glass just exploding.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. But Well, that's the cool thing about cars, though, is they all have stories, right?
Yep, like music.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, what are you working on these days, Terry?
Right now, that 67 Chevelle, it's almost reskinned, ready to go back on the frame. I mini tubbed it. So the underneath is done because if you remember when I first got it, everything had, the rockers, the inner rockers on both sides, the floorboards had to be done, the trunk had to be everything. So I'm at the point where it's on the rotisserie, it's almost done. I'm putting in a mini tub on the last side, on the passenger side now, or driver's side. So once that's finished, I just got to tweak out the frame a little bit, bring it in a little bit and set it on there and then put it together. That's it.
And you're almost
the hardest
there.
part, I'm almost there. The hardest part was just doing all that sheet metal and cutting because, you have to cut metal out because like some pieces just didn't fit. So you got to make it longer and, so it's almost done. And I got a Le Mans, a 69 Le Mans was going to be a GTO project after that. And I just picked up a GMC pickup truck, 67.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Then me and Louis Lee got some plans with that one.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it's going down.
Yeah.
What are you going to do to it?
Well, I'm going to do a short bed, of course. And it's going to be like a autocross. It's going to be like a pro touring type of thing.
Really?
All of them do. That's my thing. All of them. I want a car that does everything good. I don't want just a drag quarter car. To me, that's not practical. I'm more autocrossing because autocrossing is like everyday driving. Yeah. So I prefer the car, like do everything, handle, acceleration, do donuts, do everything well instead of just being like, okay, got some fat slicks in the back and skinnies in the front. Yeah. No.
Yeah. No, you want it to be able to drive and have fun.
Drive it.
And my wife would argue with you about a short
little bit
bed.
comfortable. Take the family upstate somewhere, whatever, such and such.
You're upstate.
What do you say, Squirrel?
My wife would argue with him about making a long bed into a short bed.
Uh-oh.
Because if you're not able to haul a piece of plywood, pickup truck is no good. That's exactly her belief.
Yeah, well, I'm not really hauling plywood, but what's going to happen? I'll do the short bed, and I'll be like, I got to haul some plywood.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But what happened? That wouldn't be the car to do it. I'd rather just, get the $15 an hour
delivery
Home Depot truck.
Yeah.
Oh, I understand the logic, Terry. I never did like short beds either.
I think short beds are.
You got like the peanut gallery going there, Squirrel. What's with that?
Come on, Terry.
I have a very independently mouthed daughter.
Oh, okay.
I wonder where she gets that from.
You raised me. Yeah. My next door neighbor has been a Ford truck guy his whole life. And he recently, a year or two ago, he bought a Raptor.
Mm.
And he has a ranch out eastern Washington. He uses it like you should, but he'll call me on the phone and say, "Hey, I'm coming back from the ranch. Look out your window," because I look out in the front of my house here, and it'll be covered. I mean, 2 inches thick of mud. The whole thing is a bright red, beautiful truck when it's all shiny. But he knows it drives me crazy because I'm like a clean car guy, So I'm just like, oh my gosh! And I say, "Don't wash that in your driveway. It's going to run down in front of my driveway, and I'm going to track it into my garage." So don't do that, So you guys may think of me as more of a European car guy, which I am, but we'll play a little game here. I've had 2 American cars. My first car was an American car. So we'll see who can first guess the brand.
Mustang or Ford.
I did have a Ford. That was Chevy. There you go, Terry. Okay. So it's a Chevy. I called it my grandma car.
Nova.
Brian, good job. A Chevy Nova 2.
Those are hot, man.
A 4-door.
4-door, yes, it was. You told me the story.
Yeah, a Ford. Yeah. Well, that Terry had an inside line. But I'm impressed, Brian. Why'd you pick Nova?
Because my grandmother had one of those.
Well, I bought it from her.
Hey, the 2-doors are hot.
Yeah.
Well,
the 2-doors
this had the 6 and 4 doors, and it still had. Remember the '60s, that plastic seat covers with the nubbies on them? You know, it still had those, which in
Oh,
San
God.
Diego were useless because if you want to sweat, sit in that thing. It's like terrible. But
Me and Terry we were at a PRI, and there was one there. Remember, Terry? It was beautiful. I mean, they really did a great job on those are nice cars, man. When you do them,
a '67,
somewhere in that area,
yeah. Well,
The 67, yeah.
it was good for me because I was a little bit older than most of my friends. So I got my license first, and we were all surfers. So I put surf racks on it, and I could take 4 or 5 of my buddies down surfing. We could stack the boards, and everybody fit in. It had that trunk that had that plastic, funky looking checkerboard, looked like a grandma's tablecloth for a picnic that set in the back on the floor. So you could throw your wetsuits in there and not worry about it too much. But yeah, I was just kind of embarrassed driving that thing because I had friends that had parents that would buy them nice cars. I'm like, I'm going to buy something cooler than this. So I'm going to see who can guess something here. After a first year, I bought what I call my poor man's. Brian's going to get this. I know. I bought my poor man's Porsche. What's a poor man's Porsche?
Volkswagen.
Right.
914.
No. It was a Volkswagen. I wish I could have had a 914. I did have one.
The what do you call it?
Right.
Carmen
Who said that?
Yeah. Jim
Who said
did.
that? Oh, yeah. Carmen Gia. Yeah. Poor man's Porsche. That was my, and I love that car. I
Try to
restored
touch
it.
one now.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
They're crazy, you know,
Even the Volkswagen campers, forget it.
wow,
Yeah.
that's I have a friend up here who, any of you guys know J&L Fabricating, Louis Shefschick?
No.
You need to know this guy. He's incredible. He has a shop that he mostly restores and handles vintage race cars. So when I was racing, he took care. I had a Lotus and a Lola, so he took care of those. They do a arrive and drive. They bring your cars to the track, assign a mechanic to you. He restores cars. They also restore Concours level cars. They did a beautiful car for my old business partner, an ISO Revolta. They made into a resto mod. So think of the ISO Revolta, European, into a resto mod, and it ended up coming in second place in what year was it? 2019 SEMA show of the Battle of the Builders.
Wow.
Second place they got on that car. Yeah. Only to be outdone by the, who are the two? God, my brain's fading here. The two brothers that build the most.
Oh, the Ring Brothers.
Ring Brothers.
Yep.
Yeah. They got first place. Yeah. But
With
really,
recoil.
yeah. really, really cool car. But yeah, that Carmen Gia was the first car I ever restored because I tore it all apart. I wanted a Porsche, so we took Porsche Signal Orange and Guards Red and mixed it 50-50 and sprayed the car in my friend's garage. Got it all over his mom's washer and dryer. She was not happy about that. We didn't know what we were doing.
So that was the fastest moving washer and dryer, though.
yeah. The spin cycle worked really well. Yeah. But, and then we took the motor out and built up like a 21, you know, what, a 1600, I think, back in the day.
Yeah.
Built up like a 2110cc with dual Delardos and put some deep, remember those, Brian, those deep dish Volkswagen wheels that were inset? Yeah, put those on it. That was kind of a fun deal. But I did have a second American car. So I'm trying to let you guys down here. Too much European talk. I got it later. It was a, what I would call a clone or a fakey-do. So it was a car built to look like another car, but of the same. Terry, you know the answer. Don't tell anybody, okay? Yeah. So what could I tell them, Terry, that would give them a little bit of a clue? That there's a snake involved?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a snake involved. So what kind of car was it?
The Cobra.
350 GT Shelby Cobra.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I bought it from a friend whose dad worked at Ford in the 60s. And he bought the car new. And he went over and met Carroll Shelby. And he bought parts from Carroll Shelby to put on this car to make it a Cobra. But it set for 20 years before he did it. So he had the fiberglass hood, the scoops. He built up the engine at the 289, but he kind of modified it a little bit. white, Wimbledon white with the blue stripes. And I'll tell you, of all the cool cars I've had, that car garnered the most attention. Well, except for one other, but the most attention every time I got gas.
That's your color, Brian.
Yep.
Well, does everybody agree? The Mustang is like icon. It's like the 911. It's been around forever,
Well,
right?
the Shelby.
I have a 66 fastback.
Oh, okay. There you go.
And that was my first car, and it's in a million pieces. And I took it apart, and I honestly have to say what you said about your crush, about afraid of driving it. I'm afraid to put the car together. There's only one time that I ever left that car and I caught somebody trying to break into it.
Oh, no.
And after that, I never left that car out of my sight. That car was in my view or was some, and I never, and like you said, I couldn't go. I mean, and we're talking, this is the last time I drove this car was in 89.
Oh, wow.
Okay. In 1989, I had the, it's actually kind of a funny story. I had it had a 2.4s. I had a lot of work done to it. I got in a lot of trouble with that car. I got nailed one night for drag racing and had something like 15 points and $2,500. And I had a lot of issues. And of course, what do? I go out and I finally bought my, I guess you could say my dream car, because it was a 89 Mustang GT.
Okay.
And I buy the GT, bring it home, and my dad goes, well, you need to talk to the insurance guy. So I called up Walt, and he said, you did what?
Yeah, you fool.
I mean, you don't even, you have 15 points on your license, and you bought a Mustang GT.
Yeah.
And I paid a lot of money the first year in insurance on that car.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's when I took it apart in 89.
Yeah.
And there's times I work on it, and trust me, I want to drive it, but I know that it's safe where it's at. And it's
Now, this is
sitting behind.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a psychological.
Yeah. And the few
deal.
times that I have the door open, or if I push it out and work on it, there's always that guy that stops, and I have to stop what I do, and I push the car, and he goes, oh, I can't look. I said, no, and I'm not interested, and please leave.
Yeah.
I know I've finally come to the conclusion that something subconscious, I know that car is there, and I'm still happy the way, even in a million pieces.
Do you think you'll ever finish?
I hope. But
I hope.
I mean, I'd like to. I mean, as I've gotten older now, like I said, I'm not a, I'm a peanut butter and jelly kind of guy, and I'm old school, and I could, my guy, like I said, I don't need to have all the creature comforts of that, and I would kind of miss the rumble and the smell and drive of it. So.
Well, I had somebody tell me once, I was working on a car, and they said, Mark, there's no hope in restoration. So when you say I hope, you can't do that.
Yeah, I know.
Because there's no hope in restoration.
Right.
Hopefully Ray will stop by and kick me in the ass, and then we can do it.
Well, I've told you, I finally got around to restoring the car that I've owned is just about as long as yours. I've had mine since 75. And like Mark said before, when I get in that car and hit the first light, turn onto the Sunrise Highway, I pull second gear, 30 years just flies off my shoulders. Literally 30 years.
Yeah.
I'm more like half my age. And it is the great American time machine. It takes you right back. I look at that hood, and even though now it's painted, it's still the same hood and same dash I looked at in the 70s. And
right.
Man, there's nothing better than that, because it's yours. And it's always been yours. And
yep.
Okay, now you guys are gonna make me cry.
I
just sold my car.
It did make my wife cry. And I was amazed, when I first got the thing running, no nose on the car, but I got it running, and I'm looking at the oil pressure like a hawk, and she's sobbing, and I kind of said, what's the matter? Is the car on fire?
Yeah. Yeah.
And she said, no. She said, I just remembered back to when we dated and you
Yeah.
drove this car. And then we always went out in it. And then,
Yeah.
married, house, kids. The car it was
Put
always
aside.
registered and insured, but it just got put away.
Yeah.
We'd come out occasionally, and then it just stayed away because it really needed a restoration.
Yeah.
And then she remembers when I dragged it home and dropped it off the flatbed with one locked wheel. We literally dragged it off the flatbed. And she said it looked so sad. It was dirty. And then you worked on it, and you were filthy every day. And the car now is in a million pieces, and nobody ever thought it would go back together. Give you a little faith.
Yeah.
And she goes, now here it is running again. She goes, it's got new life. She goes, and I see it in you. And I'm like, you're right. You're right.
See, Brian, there's your why.
And we're not getting younger.
I know.
Oh, man.
know. Well, like
That's
I said,
the truth.
So now I've gotten 3 paint chips on a brand new paint job. Every single one of them happened in my own garage. And I'll tell you something. I'm still taking it out and still enjoying it. Big deal.
I'm going to tell you something about, and I'm glad you have that attitude about paint chips. Okay. Because again, you guys that know me well, I'm a fastidious nutcase. I'm wound way too tight. My cars have to be perfect. I hate it when something happens to them. I'm so careful. My kids know that from the time they were always careful. Always lift your feet over the threshold, not to scuff it. I mean, all this stuff, they still tease me to this day. And I bought another unique car that you guys know John Wilhoit in Long Beach, California?
No.
Well, John is a master restorer of 356s and early 911s. His builds are super expensive, super awesome, but he also is into outlaw. So he builds like a 2.2 liter 356 motor that's kick ass. He'll put 911 suspension in a 356. He's like Gary Emery, Rod Emery. He'll make these cars drive like almost new cars. He built you familiar with Chuck Beck Spiders? Beck Speedsters. Chuck built a replica. He created the replica 550 Spider that James Dean died in.
I heard
and he's in his 80s. He's still building cars. He's building 904 replica, Porsche 904. He built a motorcycle with a Lamborghini 12-cylinder engine in it.
Wow.
This guy's nuts.
That's crazy.
He's incredible. I met him years ago at Laguna Seca at the races. He had a 550 Spider replica. I talked about it, and I always wanted one. John built one. John Wilhoit built one for a guy, and I bought it sight unseen. And my son and I flew to Long Beach, and we spent 5 days driving it back up the coast in that car. Nice. No top, no radio. It's like it's a little race car basically. It had a 56 Speedster engine in it, but it had been modified by him. But at any rate, I planned this trip so that we could park in underground parking places. I had a cover, really careful. Well, the second day, we pulled into Morro Bay or somewhere. I'm trying to remember where it was. And we're covering the car, and I'm speed shining the front to get the bugs off. And I look down and I go, oh man, we got a rock chip. And I was so bummed. My son was 8 years old. And he came up to me. You could tell I was pretty upset. He put his hand on my shoulder. He goes, Dad, it's not a rock chip. That's a memory mark.
It's a memory mark. Yeah.
And I looked at him and I went, who are you? But what you just said, Ray, he said, that's a memory of the trip we had today.
Yeah.
So every time you look at that, from the mouth of babes, as they say. And so I've tried to remember that and not worry so much and enjoy. And it's still hard. I don't know. Maybe I was potty trained too young. Isn't that what Freud said? Something like that. But, loosen up, man.
Yeah.
Get loose.
You know what else it is? These old school cars, they're so few and far between when you see them. So they don't have to be perfect. There's something about a 69 Camaro come rolling down the road that is in primer. The car looks good. The car just looks good no matter what.
I had more comments on my car when it was in prime than ever.
Right.
It was ridiculous.
Right.
Really?
Because it looks like the car.
Right.
It looks like it. You know what I think it is? I think it leads to the imagination of the person who's looking at it like, oh my God, what is this guy going to do to this car? Or I remember my brother used to have that same car and it was just looking like that. Oh, and he painted it. So they like you said, they're time capsules, and they're like memories. I mean, like, because each and every one of us know someone who probably had a a first gen Camaro or a GTO or Le Mans, and even when we were in high school.
Yeah.
You know, I could think back if you say a 69 Camaro, I could be like, oh, my boy Nelson had one. You could say any type of car, 72 Grand Prix. Clay, he had one. You know,
Yeah.
it was Monaco, 66 Riviera, whatever. So
Right.
even though 69 is my favorite year for Rivieras, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, I think they bring back memories, and no matter what you do, I remember I was we have a Dairy Queen near my house, and I remember I took my 69 Camaro, and I just pulled into the Dairy Queen to get ice cream, right? And there was a Ferrari, there was a Porsche, because it's like in upper New Jersey, there's a Ferrari, there's a Porsche, a couple of Porsches, they were lined up there, and here's my 69 Camaro in primer, right? Kid gets out. Now I'm sitting on line. You could tell exactly who these cars belong to. You know, I'm sitting on line, right? And I notice a little kid comes up, right? You know, with his mother. And first thing he says, he had been about maybe 6 years old. Ma, look, it's a race car, right? Pointing to my 69 Camaro.
Right. Yeah.
In primer, you know? And his mother was like, no, don't touch the car. Don't touch it. I said, no, he can open that door. That cool kid is cool. Get him in there because you know what? You got these Porsches and all that. I don't know. Maybe he's rich and he sees these and he's never really seen a 69 Camaro, but he's a car kid. And I was like, get in that car. Go ahead. Open it up, you know? And
primer or like that, or your car, Ray, there's a story to that moment in time. When you see a restored car, it's like a new car. Okay, it's new. Somebody's fixed it up. But when you see it with the flaws, I mean, kind of like a human being. When somebody's got some flaws about them, there's a story behind that.
Some bruises,
Why are they like that? What happened in their life? I mean, it's like a scar. Oh, I got this scar skateboarding when I was in 6th grade. I went down Linda Rosa. Should have never skateboarded down that street on those crappy wheels. And, you know, smashed my wrist and got a scar. Still there. Oh, yeah, I remember that day. That's the day my mom took my skateboard away. So,
well, that's how I vet out the car guys I meet. I just ask them about that car. Hey, how'd you do that? Or where'd that come from? And then if it's, I bought it that. Okay, next.
Oh, you're harsh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hey, guys, I got to jump ship.
All right, Lewis.
Later, Lewis.
Hey, Mark, appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, your family. Just pop in anytime you want.
Too kind. And thank you. Good to meet you, Squirrel. Brian, got a turbo buddy now on board. Call me, you guys. I should have you on my show. You're welcome anytime, okay?
Hey, listen, you can stay on. Ray is going to start the after party, but I got to go to bed.
Well, I got to jump. I've got to jump ship too. I got to get ready for an early morning show from a guy calling in from Switzerland of all places. So.
Oh, all right.
But really good to talk to you guys. Thank you for letting me invade the party here. I really appreciate that.
Anytime. Hey, anytime you want to throw me a couple guests, feel free. I'm always willing to take a couple.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right, guys. I'll talk to you
later.
Take care, gentlemen.
Good night.
Stay safe.